$65 billion US. A thunderous counterstrike has just been unleashed by Tokyo onto the geopolitical chessboard at the exact moment the global technology war is entering its most brutal phase. For more than 3 decades, the empire of the rising sun has endured a bitter humiliation. Japan was once the proud king of the 1980s, the nation that shaped modern electronic civilization and made the West tremble in fear. But then the balance of power was torn apart. Welcome to Conflict and Power Podcast, where we explore the hidden wars of power, finance, and technology that are silently reshaping the world. Japan watched helplessly as the United States used software and the internet to dominate the planet. It watched bitterly as South Korea and Taiwan seized the semiconductor throne. And most devastating of all, China, once merely a low-cost manufacturing follower, has transformed into a colossal industrial dragon, crushing market barriers with terrifying speed. From the empire that once dictated the rules of the game, Japan has been reduced to an aging warrior trapped in the ashes of its former glory. But when a nation forged by the spirit of the samurai is pushed to the edge of survival, that is precisely when the gamble of destiny begins. The massive $65 billion package recently launched by Tokyo is not meant to assemble outdated electronics. It is a counteroffensive aimed at reclaiming the throat of the artificial intelligence world. Can this mountain of money resurrect an empire that has grown rigid with age? Or is this merely the final desperate convulsion before Japan disappears into darkness? The fall of arrogant giants. To understand the fury burning inside Japan today and why Tokyo is now spending money so aggressively, we must dissect the 3 deepest scars of Japanese industry. 3 names that once symbolized absolute technological supremacy, but now stand as proof of what happens when an empire refuses to evolve. Sony. Toshiba. Panasonic. Look at Sony. The company once revolutionized the way humanity listened to music with the legendary Walkman. Sony had everything: elite hardware, cutting-edge electronics, and a vast entertainment empire. But when the storm of digital music arrived, MP3 technology and Apple's iPod, Sony became hesitant and conservative. Internal conflicts paralyzed the company. Its music division feared digital distribution would destroy physical CD sales, so it restrained the hardware division. Sony saw the risks of the new era. But it failed to recognize one brutal truth. Consumer behavior had already changed forever. Meanwhile, Apple surged forward like a hurricane with the iPod and iTunes ecosystem. That single strategic failure was enough to shift global technological power from Tokyo to Silicon Valley. The second scar, Toshiba, was even more painful. Toshiba was once one of Japan's greatest technological icons and the inventor of NAND flash memory, the very technology inside nearly every modern smartphone and computer. They once controlled the bloodstream of the digital economy. But arrogance led to catastrophic mistakes. Toshiba rushed into the U.S. nuclear energy business and suffered enormous losses. To hide the disaster, the company became involved in one of the worst accounting scandals in Japanese corporate history. When the crisis exploded, Toshiba was forced to sell off its core memory chip business to Western investment funds. They did not merely sell assets. They sold their future. And finally, Panasonic. There was once a time when Panasonic dominated television shelves and consumer electronics markets across the world. But faced with the brutal rise of Samsung, LG, and Chinese electronics manufacturers, Panasonic retreated from the consumer electronics battlefield and shifted toward EV battery production for Tesla. It was a practical decision for survival. But it was also a bitter admission that the glamorous technological empire they once ruled no longer belonged to them. 3 stories. 3 bloody scars. And 1 brutal lesson from history. If a technological superpower lacks the courage to destroy and reinvent itself, the market and its rivals will do it for them in the cruelest possible way. The wake-up call from Beijing. Japan may have continued sleeping in nostalgia had China not risen. Beijing is no longer a cheap factory that merely copies foreign technology. China has become a technological superpower armed with near-limitless financial resources, a billion-person domestic market, and an unprecedented ability to mobilize national power. For years, Japanese corporations viewed China as a gold mine, a place to exploit cheap labor and expand profits. But eventually, that same market absorbed Japanese technology and created terrifying new competitors. From electric vehicles and battery technology to telecommunications, artificial intelligence, and digital infrastructure, China no longer competes solely on low prices. It competes through overwhelming scale, lightning-fast execution, and powerful state support. The moment that truly awakened Tokyo came in 2010. During a diplomatic crisis, Beijing suddenly cut off rare earth exports to Japan. Rare earth materials are essential for advanced technology manufacturing. At that moment, Tokyo realized a terrifying truth. No matter how advanced an industrial nation becomes, it can instantly turn into a pile of scrap metal if it cannot control its core supply chains. Today, Japan is trapped in an extremely dangerous geopolitical position. On one side stands the United States, its military ally and the owner of the world's most powerful software ecosystem. On the other side stands China, Japan's largest trading partner and also its most frightening technological rival. If Tokyo leans too far toward Beijing, it risks punishment from Washington and the loss of its security shield. But if it separates from China too quickly, the Japanese economy could suffer devastating damage. And amid this geopolitical earthquake, the $65 billion investment package is effectively a declaration of war. Tokyo wants the world to know. Japan refuses to become anyone's technological vassal. The supreme power of photoresist. $65 billion sounds enormous. But compared to the hundreds of billions that the United States and China are pouring into semiconductors, it is merely an entrance ticket. Japan's true intelligence lies elsewhere. It has chosen not to fight head-on. Japan is not trying to build a Japanese Google or a Japanese Nvidia. Instead, it controls something the entire world desperately needs. Photoresist. This is Japan's near-monopoly domain. To manufacture advanced chips, the world relies on ASML's EUV lithography machines worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But those machines become completely useless without photoresist. Photoresist is an ultralight-sensitive material coated onto silicon wafers. When ultraviolet light strikes it, microscopic nanostructures are formed to create the electronic circuitry inside semiconductors. Japan currently controls between 70 and 90% of the global market for these critical materials. In the advanced EUV photoresist segment for chips below 7 nanometers, Japan is almost completely dominant. That is why even the United States and China cannot escape dependence on Tokyo. The formulas used to create photoresist are guarded more tightly than state secrets. Its purity must approach near perfection. A single microscopic particle contaminating the process can destroy an entire batch of chips worth tens of millions of dollars. Japanese companies spent decades and enormous quantities of rare chemicals through countless failed experiments to perfect these materials. Even after investing hundreds of billions of yuan into semiconductors, Chinese companies still control only a tiny share of the advanced photoresist market. That is the power of the one holding the final key. The gamble called Rapidus. But Japan does not merely want to defend itself. It wants to reclaim the semiconductor crown. That is why Rapidus was born. The Japanese government gathered major corporations into a national semiconductor alliance with one extremely ambitious goal: to mass-produce 2-nanometer chips by 2027. This mission borders on technological suicide. While TSMC, Samsung, and Intel spent decades and hundreds of billions of dollars advancing to cutting-edge process nodes, Japan now seeks to leap directly to the summit. Tokyo is sending engineers to the United States, purchasing Western technology, and bringing semiconductor manufacturing back onto Japanese soil. If successful, this could become the greatest industrial rebirth Japan has experienced since World War II. But if it fails, tens of billions of taxpayer dollars could vanish into ashes. And above all else, Japan still carries one fatal weakness: a demographic crisis. And an extremely conservative corporate culture. If Japan lacks the courage to break apart its outdated mindset and open itself to global talent, then even a mountain of $65 billion may become nothing more than the final desperate cry of an empire that once ruled the technological world. But the story does not end there. Because what Japan is truly trying to reclaim is not merely semiconductors. It is power itself. For decades, the world believed oil determined who ruled the planet. But in the 21st century, oil is gradually being replaced by something even more terrifying. The chip. Every smartphone. Every AI system. Every military satellite. Every guided missile. Every massive data center owned by Google, Microsoft, or Amazon. All depend on tiny semiconductors only a few nanometers wide. Whoever controls chips controls the future. That is why the semiconductor war is no longer a normal economic competition. It has become a struggle for survival between superpowers. Washington understands this perfectly. That is why the United States is aggressively trying to choke China through technological sanctions. It banned Nvidia from selling advanced AI GPUs to Beijing. It pressured the Netherlands to block ASML from exporting EUV lithography machines. It pulled Japan and South Korea into a technological alliance designed to contain China's semiconductor ambitions. Yet the paradox is terrifying. The more China is cornered, the more dangerous it becomes. Beijing is pouring hundreds of billions into semiconductors like a wartime economy. State-backed investment funds are appearing everywhere. Gigantic factories are being built at insane speed. Tens of thousands of engineers are being mobilized to break through the Western technological blockade. China understands that if it loses the semiconductor war, it will remain permanently trapped beneath American power. And that is something Xi Jinping will never accept. That is exactly what terrifies Japan. Because Tokyo understands just how frightening China's industrial power truly is. Japan has already watched its steel industry crushed by China. It has seen its consumer electronics sector overwhelmed by cheap products from Shenzhen. It has witnessed Chinese EV brands explode onto global markets with a speed that shocked Europe itself. Today, one of the few things preserving Japan's strategic position is the advanced core technologies China still cannot replace. And photoresist is one of the last remaining pressure points. But even that advantage will not last forever. History has never been merciful to empires that fall asleep on their throne. America once dominated chip manufacturing before losing much of that production to Asia. Intel was once viewed as untouchable, yet now finds itself surpassed by TSMC. Even Sony, Japan's ultimate technological icon, collapsed simply because it reacted too slowly to the smartphone revolution. Nobody is immortal in the technology world. And that may be the most terrifying reality for Tokyo. Because Japan understands it is running out of time. While the United States and China race into the AI era at breakneck speed, Japan continues struggling with an aging society and rigid corporate culture. Many Japanese corporations still operate with a 1990s mindset. Slow processes. Heavy bureaucracy. A deep fear of risk. Meanwhile, American AI startups can reshape entire industries within months. Chinese tech giants can build entirely new ecosystems within only a few years. The gap is widening rapidly. That is why this $65 billion investment is not merely an economic stimulus package. It resembles a national mobilization. A declaration that Japan refuses to disappear from the map of technological power. Rapidus is not merely a company. It is Japan's final hope. If successful, Japan could once again become one of the central powers of the semiconductor world. Tokyo would no longer merely supply materials. It would return to producing the most advanced technological brains on Earth. But if it fails, it may mark the end of Japan's dream of technological resurrection. And when that happens, the world may enter an entirely new era. An era where technological power belongs to only two superpowers. Washington and Beijing. The real war of the 21st century may have only just begun.
Thank you for watching the video to the end. If you found the analysis in this video helpful in understanding the currency wars, geopolitics, and power struggles silently operating in the world. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more content. And now, I'd love to hear your perspective.